Hey guys, what is up? It's Hunter Bick with DragTheBar.com, and this is the final installment of my match with against Barney Boatman. And just to pick off from the last video, we at the end of the last one, I think I played better in part 5 than I did in part 4. I did miss a couple, I think, important bluffs, but in general, I think I definitely stole a few key pots from him, and I picked up some hands against him as well. But for the most part, I pretty much maintained my control on the action, and I still feel like at this point in the match I have a pretty big edge. So with that, let's get to it. All right, we're not going to be playing King 3. So just to recap a little bit, he's still 3-betting with, every pocket pair. He's still 3-betting with, a very, very wide range. And most of my hands have just been min opening. And then I'm pot opening hands I want to play a bigger pot with. But sadly, we don't get action with our aces. Not going to play that. But we had just taken a break actually right before I started filming this part, and I just made some coffee, and we were finally kind of getting back into it. I was starting to feel a little more focused. It had been kind of all afternoon by this point. We'd been playing, so the coffee definitely helped, and I feel like I finished this match up pretty strong. So I decided not to c-bet here. I just thought it was so connected, and he'd have so many different pieces of this, and he never folds. He rarely folds to one bet for me anyway. So I just checked it back, and then he leaves out, and I just don't see a reason to get involved here. All right, so we bumped this up. And we flop huge for what seems like, the first time in a while that I connected with a 3-bet pot. So I decided to lead out. The last one of the last 3-bet pots in the part 5 video, I got aces, and I checked it to him. And he didn't bet. And for the most part, he's pretty passive in these things. He doesn't do a lot of... He plays pretty straightforward in the 3-bet pots so far. So I decided to just bet out and hope that he's got something. I don't think he's going to try to take a stab at this if I check it to him. So I decided my best option is just to keep betting and just hope he's got something. He is going to call my 3-bets with like every ace. I mean, he's called them before with like ace 5, ace 2 suited, that sort of thing. So I think I just need to keep betting here. And he did catch me double barreling in a 3-bet pot at 1.2. So another reason to kind of, stay aggressive. The other thing, like, that's something in general, in just heads up in general. I don't like getting fancy on the turn after I've 3-bet, largely because people are scared of getting, or they're very scared of getting check raised in a 3-bet pot because they know they're going to have to check fold or check call. And so often they have something marginal that they're like praying they can get to showdown with. So I find that, very rarely, unless it's somebody really tricky and they're floating you with the intention of betting the turn, or, they're really aggressive and they want you to check raise them, or they have a big hand, it's like they almost never fire there. No one ever value bets thin on the turn, heads up, in a 3-bet pot. So when you have a hand, you need to just keep betting. I mean, that's one thing I just cannot. I cannot overemphasize. I've lost so much money over my heads up career by trying to go for the check raise on the turn in 3-bet pots, and it's just does not work especially well. All right, so I bet the last hand and he folded. Obviously, I had like a huge combo draw with my pair and flush draw. So I 3-bet my queen jack. this hand is going to play. I'm 3-betting this hand because it plays pretty well against his calling range. And I can bluff like all. I can value bet the queen and the jack. I can bluff the king and the ace. And his calling range is so wide that, for one thing, I think I have a lot of equity against it with this hand. But I can also, my 3-betting range is so narrow that I can bluff some boards like this one too. This board is not exactly ideal, just because of the 7-8 flush draw. It's kind of crappy, but what can you do? So I decided to double barrel here, and I think it's pretty good. It's kind of tough because I think he's gonna float me. I think he's gonna call with like any open-ended, any pair, any draw, a very wide range. And I did just double barrel him in the last hand, and he like folded pretty quick. In general, he's respected my double barrels in 3-bet pots, so I decided to do it here. I think it's okay. I'm not like, I don't think it's amazing. I think it's definitely a thin bluff. But mostly, I think he'll call me like so light on the flop that I can get him off a lot of stuff on the turn. But he does call, which is a complete disaster. I mean, at this point, I don't think I can do anything here but check. I mean, I'm definitely not like in love by any means with that turn bet, but like that's exactly the kind of hand I was hoping I could get him off of. Because I know all those hands are in his range, and it's all right. He did make a pretty good call on the turn. It's the kind of thing where like the other mistake I made there is I think I bet too much on the turn because if I shoved that river, he was going to be left with like such good pot odds that he was going to have a pretty easy call. So I decided to raise 9-8 suited now that we're deep again. And he just folds. But I also thought, of course, I mean, but when he calls that turn, like his range is heavily weighted to like a 7, a flush, and an ace, and like there's no way he's folding any of those on that river. I didn't think anyway. So I just thought the most important thing on that river bet, that river was the fact that I just didn't think he had nearly enough hands in his range for that bluff that he could fold for that bluff to be profitable. All right, so I decided to bet here. I do it really fast, which means I was probably kind of irritated at the last hand. Now, this is like a snap call. I mean, we all know how much he likes to check raise. We've seen the other videos. So I have the best hand here like a lot. So I just call pretty quick just to hope to induce a check. And I do get my check, and I decided to go ahead and bet the king. I think, am I going to bet this? Let's see here. Yeah, I bet the king. Now, obviously, my intention was to like check back and like take this hand to showdown. But I think when the king shows up and he checks that quickly, I don't think he has anything. And if he has like a medium pair between the 2 and the jack, the king can get him off of it. I might even get him off. Well, I'm not going to get him off a jack, but I don't think he's going to check raise the jack every time either. So he's just got like so many. He's got so much air, and he's got so many like medium pairs that I think I just need to go ahead and bet here and just turn my ace high into a bluff. Just because, I mean, I think it's the kind of thing where all I'm going to be doing by checking back is giving him a chance to win the pot. And there's just really no need to do that when he's going to fold so much of the time to this king. So I throw 150 out, and he folds pretty quickly. Not going to play the old 2-9. Alright, so I like the suited aces deep. I like ace 5 to ace 2 a lot better than ace 6 and ace 7. For obvious reasons, for the obvious reason of being able to make, the wheel. So I remember being in this part of the match. And I was definitely more focused than the kind of the middle part, specifically kind of the part 4 area. And I'm still kind of antsy because we'd played 622 hands straight at this point, and I was definitely kind of ready to wrap it up and get on with my day. So I was just trying to finish him off. At the same time, I wasn't about to leave this match and leave what I thought was leave $1,800 on the table that I thought I had a pretty good chance of being able to get. So I decided to just limp there for no particular reason other than I just kind of wanted to throw in a limp. I had a suited hand and I didn't really want to be 3-bet, so I just limped in and took the pot that way. I also kind of want to test the waters a little bit, see what he's going to do. I think I limped a couple other times in this match, but not really. Alright, so we bump up ace-3. Or we limp ace-3 again. Not a bad hand to be limping, just because if he raises, like, I can often be ahead of his range. So we flop 2-pair, and he just folds. We do get some pretty big pots in this video. I know the first section has been pretty slow. Well, other than the one where I double-barreled him. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like I've done a pretty good job. A lot of times, like, as the match goes on, it becomes easy. Or it becomes an easy habit to fall into to just, let me pause it. Finish that thought. It becomes easy to start playing more hands because you want to bust him and you're tired of sitting here and you kind of want to wrap up the match. So you play more hands to try to hit something and do it. But at the same time, like, that's like obviously an invitation to just bleed money. So I definitely feel like I'm doing a good job late in the match of sticking to my guns and staying tight and keeping a lot of my edge in this match comes from playing superior hands and then playing my hands better when I miss the board. So yeah, I definitely am pleased to see that. So he 3-bets me here. Part of the reason I min raise is because I feel like I'm getting 3-bet more when I min raise. So I throw in a 4-bet. And he just folds pretty quick. It's one good thing about pot limit. Like, I can control the pot so easily post-flop with my position that I, auto 4-bet there. I would have 4-bet, like, a pretty decent range, actually. Like, ace-queen. Like heads up, like, no limit. I'm not sure ace-queen would be an auto 4-bet there. I mean, obviously depending on the guy and what his 5-bet tendencies would be, but by no means standard. Here it would have been standard. So we get some more crappy hands out of position. Yeah, I mean, there's just like it's one of those parts of the match. There's just really nothing you can do. I mean, loosening up out of position is just. This guy he would just won a pretty decent pot, and I really am not looking to do anything marginal that's going to let him pick up another big one, and then one more big one, he's right back in it, and that's not what we want. So we're going to keep folding in the meantime. It'd be good to throw in another 4-bet, actually. He really hasn't 4-bet any, like, he hasn't really 4-bet. I think that's the only 4-bet I've made that he's actually folded to. So now I've been so tight, I actually wouldn't mind throwing in another one with, like, something decent that could actually flop something. So I checked this back just because, for the most part in this match, I've been polarizing my c-betting range, which I think is good against a guy like this. I don't really expect him to catch on, and some people will, but it's still going to take them a while to catch on before they realize what you're doing. And I'm really just didn't feel like that was a huge concern here. So I checked back the medium pair. Um, at the same time, I will of course bet some medium strength hands, but in general, I was mostly polarizing it in this match. Well, I guess not. I mean, I was doing it here and there. I kind of went through phases. But anyway, um, he min check raises, which is ridiculous. I mean, if he has a jack, I think he's gonna bet the turn. I don't think he's gonna go for the min check raise. So this is like a 10 or like nothing like so often. So I'm of course calling, and the bottom line is I don't really think there's any value in betting here. So I just check it back, and he did in fact hit two pair, which was unfortunate. I'm not sure why I didn't bet the river. I think it was I think that's kind of surprising. I definitely would have bet the river. I mean, the king's a good card for my range for sure, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. It's not like I don't think it's I don't think that warrants not value betting with his two pair. I mean, because the bottom line is there's still not a ton of hands I'm gonna like be able to raise on a board like that. So anyway, all right. So we flop air, ace high. So I check this one back. The 10's not a good card. It definitely connects a lot. It's starting to set up some draws, set up some straight draws, some flush draws, and so I just check it back again. I'm just kind of hoping to show the hand down. And he bets half pot, and I decided to just look him up. And he makes a decent value bet. In the past he'd gone like, he often goes full pot for value. So I looked him up there, and he made a decent value bet. My hand's like really face up there, which is kind of part of the problem of taking that line, but that's all right. So I flopped my two, and remember toward the end of the last video, I mentioned that he had been raising my donk bets quite a bit. So that's why I'm betting out here. I don't think he's going to c-bet here very often. He doesn't c-bet. Well, he c-bets like 70% of the time. But there's not a lot for him to actually hit on that board. So I'm kind of just hoping to get a float or induce a bluff raise or something. But sadly, he just folds, so. Alright, so fortunately he folds when we have a crappy hand. And some more nonsense from the big blind. So kind of a boring stretch. We're going to get there though, I promise. Okay, so we have some post-flop action after like 10 hands of folding. And here's one I decided to c-bet just because I hadn't c-bet the last couple, and I just wanted to get one in there. Now it's a very drawy board, so there's a lot he can call with, but I do have a couple backdoor draws. I have an overcard, and I think I'll be able to barrel him a decent amount of the time on, some various other cards. So I think this is a decent one to do it on. I get a card that brings me one step closer to both my backdoor draws, which is pretty cool. So now I've got I got my gut shot. I have a double gut shot, to the 6 and to, an 8 and a jack will both give me a straight, and then of course my flush. So a pretty easy double barrel, I think. I think I can get him off like, I don't know, a 7, like a 7-6, like a 7-5, something like that. Pocket 5s, pocket 6s, something like that. And he folds pretty quick. We just have to remember that, like, you look at a board like that and say, yeah, well, it's so drawy. Of course, there's so much you can call with, and that's true, yes, but at the same time, like he floats the flop very, very light. Like he'll call me with just a bare ace, and he generally just doesn't give me a whole lot of credit. So I think it's important to make sure that I'm semi bluffing my draws in the turn, just as a way to balance my big hands, but also because he gets the turn so light. So I have to make sure that I'm keeping the pressure on him a decent amount of the time. All right, so we're deep, so this is a pretty good hand to 3-bet. I haven't 3-bet in a while, so I decided to bump it up, and we do take it down, which is nice. So I raise this one up. This is a kind of a hand you can fold to. And we have 4 high, so we are going to c-bet. And he snap folds. Yeah, I mean, his looseness in the big blind is kind of ridiculous. I mean, 70% back there is just very high. All right, so here's kind of an interesting hand. So like I talked about a minute ago, I've been so tight that a light 4-bet, a light 4-bet might be in order. He folded to my last 4-bet, and so I decided to throw one out here again just to see, what I can see if I can get another fold. I have a suited hand. This hand's all right. I would vastly prefer like Jack 10 suited or Jack 9, even Jack 9 suited. But between the suitedness and, it's a little connected. It's a 2-gapper, but, it can make a couple straights. So we flop, the flop is huge for my range here. And that's kind of key. I mean, my 4-betting range is like almost all big cards, So I think that, and he's really only folded the 1 4-bet, so we know that he can call light. So I decided to pick a bet size that looks value-y and is still big enough that I'm not going to get a whole lot of light calls. If he has an ace, then I'm going to be in trouble. I don't think he's ever going to fold it, but I do have 5 outs to 2-pair or trips. So not to mention that if he's thinking about my range, then I'm going to get a lot of folds on this board because this board just crushes my 4-betting range. So he calls, which I'm not real happy about. And now I've got a legitimately tough decision. So let's see what happens. I'm now open-ended. So I've got a significant chunk of equity. I decide that he's probably not going to fold an ace. The question is, what else did he just call me with? What did he check and call with here? Queens? Kings? I mean, very few combos, and he definitely would have 5-bet. I would think he would 5-bet kings. I don't think he's just going to call a 4-bet out of position with these stacks. So I can see maybe queens, I guess. Other than that, he could definitely have, an ace. So I decided to check it back. I didn't really feel like, getting check raised would be a huge disaster considering I have a ton of outs. I could definitely have 15 out, 14 outs here, 13 outs here. So I decided to check it back and, just see what we get on the river. We get another 9. And I can't remember what happens here. He's thinking. It's hard for me to put him on a flush draw because I guess he's capable of calling with any 2 suited, but he's gonna have to have a good a good suited hand. It's gonna have to be a suited connector would be the bottom of his calling range. And even then he's not gonna call me with I don't think 5-7 suited. He might call me with 6-7 or 5-6 or 7-8. But I don't know about a 1-gapper. I guess it's possible. So he checks. And now it's another tough call. I mean, I really can only put him on it's hard for me to put him on a better hand that's going to fold. All I can really come up with is like maybe I can get him off Queen Jack, and I don't even know about that considering I just checked back the turn. So I think, and he's just never going to fold an ace. So I think I just have to check it back and pray that I'm somehow good here. And that's what I do. And lo and behold, I am. So that was a relief. I immediately pull it up, and he had King 10. So, you know, I think it's important to, when we look at his range here and when we decide to bluff or not, I don't think we can value bet, honestly. I don't know, like, he's not calling another bet with that. He's just not going to call another bet with, like, a worse hand than mine, I didn't think. So, and he doesn't have, like, Jack 7 or Jack 6, like, ever. So, we pretty much have to, his whole range is, like, it's hands that, like, if he calls, like, he's going to have me beat. And if I bet, I just don't know how many hands he calls the flop with that he's going to fold later on in the hand. Like, I think that hand is, like, one of the few. I could see King Queen, King 10, and, like, maybe, like, I think that's it, honestly. So, it was really hard for me to put him on something I could bluff against and succeed in bluffing him. So, fortunately, I kind of ran into the bottom of his range there, and that was very fortunate. Definitely a form of running well. But it's hard for me to think he would have called another bet there. I guess the gut shot definitely helps him on the flop, but all right. So we bump up our jacks. And we pick up a nice flop. So I decided to go with kind of my normal c betting amount. I went like $10 higher. I had been like 120, 130. Went a little bit higher because I wanted to be able to fire the turn pretty big, but unfortunately he just folded. So stacks are pretty much right back to where they were before that unfortunate incident where I double barreled the ace 7 8 7 turn. So this time I decided to check. I decided to do I bet? Checking back is actually fine. Okay, yeah, I end up checking back just because, like, between the times he check raises me and floats me here on such a dry board, I mean, he's never going to give me credit for a hand. So I just didn't think this c-bet was going to work nearly often enough to show a profit. So I decided to check back, and fortunately I got a good turn card to barrel him, and then he folds quickly. That's one thing. Just kind of heads up in general. You have to think about, I mean, how he's going to interpret your c-bet on different textures. And when you see a real dry texture like 2-3-8 rainbow, I mean, it's going to be a texture where he just doesn't believe that you are value betting. So he's going to either float you, call you light, check raise you. But if you check back and a good card for your range comes off, then all of a sudden it's a whole new ball game, and you can credibly rep something. So often it's just good to check back like your garbage on the flop on dry textures in hope of a bluffable card coming, and that's pretty much what happened there. All right, so some more folding. So I've definitely been calling a lot of aces that I wouldn't play against some opponents. And a good spot to float here for sure. I pick up a gut shot. think I just fold here. He really does not double barrel me very often. I do call. I'm trying to think about that. He just hasn't double barreled me a whole lot. But he did just lose a big pot, and often that'll frustrate people. So I'm guessing my plan was to just, you know, yeah, I mean, okay, so he has 5 and he value bet it. It's kind of interesting. Like I just said, I think folding on the turn is the way to go there. I think that was a little optimistic. So, kind of one of those boards that you hate to see when you have queens. And I decided to check back because I thought there was a very high probability he would check back, and because he almost always does when after I 3-bet and check to him, he's almost always checking back. So I kind of want to slow this pot down. I don't want to create a huge pot and, end up having to check call a shove on the river or something like that. So I check the flop back to slow things down. I pick up a pretty darn good card for my hand, and with my flush draw, my gut shot. So I decided to bet now. I kind of think he would have bet a king on the flop. So even if he has a king, I have a ton of equity. So I thought it was a pretty standard bet on the turn there. So I decided to go full pot at this one just to try to discourage a check raise. Generally, if I'm raising bigger or betting bigger, he check raises less. So I kind of used it there to just represent an ace. It was a good board to do that also because I could, the ace is something you might not want to bluff into. All right, so we have okay. So I paused it during the break, and that's convenient because now I don't have to edit it out myself at post video making. All right, so got the ace-5. And on this board, we can do a couple different things. Checking back is fine. I think betting is fine. We just got to remember his range is just so huge that, we can kind of go both ways on a texture like this. This time I decided to just check it back and show the hand down the whole way. And he's got ace-4, so that's fine. Okay, so ace-7. We get 3-bet. Honestly, I think I should have just folded right here. Ace-7 just plays so badly against even a wide 3-bet range. It's just tough because you never know where you are in the hand, no matter what you flop. So I'm not a huge fan of that call. And I think even for the 40 bucks, I can just fold. So he leads out 80 into 120. And I toy with the idea of raising because he doesn't really fold to my post-flop raises like that often. And I do have the best hand here like a ton. So I ultimately decided to just call because I thought that I could get him to go into check call mode, or maybe he would fire again on the turn. He hasn't fired a ton of turns, but at the same time, I thought the board was so dry that I just think it whiffed most of his range so badly that I'm only really going to get action from a 7, a pair, or 7 or an overpair really, or maybe 4s to 6s, but there aren't many of those. So 3s to 6s. So ultimately, I just didn't think he has enough other 7s in his range that wasn't really sure I could, raise there for value. I'm just going to block out everything else and then get plenty of action from hands I don't want action against. So I just called, and we hit the ace on the turn, which is a phenomenal result. So here I decided to put a raise in. I think this is mandatory, partially because I think when he bets out, he either has an ace or he doesn't. And if I just call on this turn, I think that if he doesn't have an ace, he's not going to put any more money anyway. And if he does have an ace, he's certainly not going to fold to my turn bet because he doesn't give me a lot of credit. And he's just never going to fold top pair against me, and I know that. So that's why I'm raising. So he just folds. So nothing we can really do there. He just didn't have anything. And I definitely didn't think he was going to, he's definitely missed some value bets that I consider to be kind of standard on the river. So I definitely didn't think he was going to be betting that river, especially after I call it with the ace. Because when I float there and then when I float the flop and call the turn, like I can definitely, have an ace as well. So I kind of just think if he was bluffing, he was going to be done on the turn regardless. So I had to just worry about his value betting range. Alright, so Queen 9 suited. We're definitely going to be playing this for a 3-bet, apparently. Yeah, I mean, this hand's decent for a 3-bet. I would probably rarely, if ever, 3-bet the offsuit version. But the suited version will play decently post-flop. And I'm trying to keep the pressure on him. So I check back my ace high. And I decided to bet here. I think that, there are enough draws out there that like I could get a check call from a draw, a call from a worse ace high, that I could bet for value on that turn. So I thought my top pair, and I'm definitely going to bet and call check raise because it's gonna happen a decent amount. So this is one stat I've kind of been using. Heads up is this right stat on the bottom line for him, which is what's happened money wise in the last 10 minutes. He's down $916. And basically the whole point of that is just you kind of see what's happened to him in case, maybe you're multi-tabling or you're not paying too close attention. But and often a hand that happened 8 minutes ago might seem like 20 minutes ago when you're playing. So it kind of gives you an idea. And basically it's just kind of a way to, see where he's coming, where his head might be in terms of his frustration factor. Generally, you lose a buy-in real fast or 2 buy-ins real fast. It can, certainly affect your decision making. So, so here I think I'm just checking this hand down. I think against his range, I think I have the best hand just like so much. I'm never gonna get him off ace high. I'm never getting him off a pair. So, and he does have king 3, which is, it is what it is. Okay, some more. All my starting hands in this video have been like really trashy or like really good. Not a lot of in between ones. Okay, so ace queen and we get some action. Here I kind of like a value bet. I think he's going to check call with a lot of, draws that kind of connect to this, ace highs, maybe even some overcards. And if he calls a raise, if he check raises me, I'm gonna call. And I bet with that intention. Okay, or in this case, I might even 3-bet. or call. I think three betting has some. I think there's some merit to three betting. I think I might actually have some fold equity considering I can bring it up to 390. So he's going to put in 280 to call. Having said that, I think that I definitely think he's got a lot of air in his range, and calling is effective too because generally after he doesn't barrel me a lot with his air after he check raises and I call. So because of that, I don't really need to be three betting him a whole lot on the flop, just because if he's never going to barrel me or rarely going to barrel me with his air, then I can just call him down, or I can just call the check raise and show my ace high down and collect my equity. So that's mostly the line I've been taking against him. Against somebody who's always going to barrel you after they check raise you, that's the kind of guy you need to be three betting the flop more against. So I call, and a great blank card comes off, and I'm expecting him to check, and he does. And I check back. I'm going to check back. I'm glad to see I didn't do it very quickly. That's kind of an indication to me that I'm playing pretty well, because it's it's so easy just to check back right here. And what am I thinking here? I don't see a point in betting. And he does in fact have a 6, so that's all right. I mean he's still he's still check raising pretty much the same range he's been check raising the entire match, like draws in any piece. Actually, he hasn't even check raising that many draws. It's kind of weird. He'll check raise, like he's done it a few times, but it's often a pair, but it's often, or it's like a bad straight draw. It's like the flush draws he like checks and calls with, and then like he'll, I don't know, it's kind of, he does a decent job of mixing it up, but it's often like second pair, bottom pair, or like air. So I turn my two pair, and I go ahead and bet. And he check raises me here, so this is a tough decision. He has not double check raised me very often, and let's see what happens. This I consider to be probably my biggest mistake of the match right here, because I don't think this is justifiable. Let's talk about it. So he check raises the flop. All right, nothing special. He always check raises the flop, like he does the other 31% of the time. So that alone doesn't say anything. And I have my pair, so of course I'm going to call. So I turn my 9, and he goes for another check raise. Now he has not taken this line. I don't think I honestly can't remember another time he took this line in this match. I don't think he has. So let's talk about what his range is. I mean, what hand am I beating here? Is he going to take this line with air? I seriously doubt it. Simply because, in 700 hands, he hasn't done it yet. And he's just been very consistent about check folding after check raising with air, and barreling after he check raises with a hand. Or he goes into check call mode when he has a weak hand, like bottom pair or a second pair. So, what is he doing this with? If we can take out a lot of his air, then he could have an overpair. He has not. We have seen him slow play kings and other big hands, so he could definitely have one of those. In which case, I'm crushed. Or he could have a 3, in which case I'm crushed. So, this is a classic example of not really just saying, oh, I have 2 pair against a guy who check raises a lot, I'm going to put the money in. And I think this is a very big mistake on my part. I just don't think, I can't come up with, looking at this hand right now, I can't come up with one hand that I'm beating. Maybe he could have ace 9 or king 9 after check raising the flop with air, but that's it. Not that impressed with this hand. I think he definitely has a 3 here, almost always. And I honestly don't remember the actual results of this hand, just for the record. But looking at it now, I'm sure he has a 3 or a boat in this case. So I think that hand was very badly played on my part. I think that I think that's my biggest mistake in the entire match. And you know, when you make a mistake like that toward the end of a really long match, it's like particularly devastating because now we're like almost even stacks, and I was on the verge of, you know, getting another stack from him, and we're 700 hands in, and like I thought things were winding down and things were going my way, and now I got to battle all the way back. So it can be definitely frustrating, you know, from my point of view. So that was an unfortunate decision on my part. I'm not proud of that one. But that's why I try to be really honest and hard about and hard on the mistakes I make in my videos, just because like, you know, I'm trying to help you guys learn from, like I said, my mistakes and my good play alike. You know, everybody makes mistakes, so it's usually better to try to learn from someone else's mistakes than your own, if possible. All right, so we're not playing. Oh, we are playing the King 7. Another sign that I'm irritated right now. I like snap called that pre-flop. This is a hand I usually wouldn't play. So I think it's pretty obvious that I'm a little steamed up right here. And of course I'm calling his min bet. I don't even know what that means. I don't, you know, I have the best hand here a lot. So he bets min, then he bets like, then he bets like 20. Now he's like thinking. I mean, it almost looks like he has an ace here. Yeah, so I'm insta folding now. I mean, when he takes that line, he's like trying to induce action, and then he's, I mean, I'm sure he had an ace or a queen. It's just like so obvious. All right, so I 3-bet this one. It's not bad. I mean, we're deep enough that like we're never gonna get stacks in pot limit in this hand, unless it's a cooler situation. So we're kind of past the threshold where I have to worry about playing for stacks, just because like if anybody checks back or if he doesn't put in a huge raise, then like we're never getting all in. So I don't really have to worry too much about it. He's just not the kind of guy that's like likes to run huge bluffs. So the board's dry here, and I go with my full pot, my full pot bet, just to try to avoid, you know, a silly check raise or something, and just take it down right here, right now. So again, another example of, you know, I think this call is questionable at best, despite the stacks. Uh, so let's talk about this one. All right, so the check raise I think is fine. He doesn't. I just haven't check raised the flop a whole lot at all, and I think that I could definitely get some credit here. So if he doesn't have a king or a 7, I don't think he's gonna fight back at all, and it does work out. But I think you have to go full pot right there, which I did. So that worked out pretty well. So he leads out here, and I decided to raise him, largely because like I think he could bet a 5, in which case I'm value raising. He could bet a 7, and in which case I have hopefully have a little bit of fold equity, but not. And he could also bet a draw, in which case I'm value raising. So my plan there was to raise the turn and check back the river. So I definitely thought between the hands I could fold and the draws that would just call, I thought that was probably a profitable raise. But he did have a 7, and I think we all know that he's not going to fold that hand very often. But in fact, he's probably never gonna fold a 7. So it's really just like try to hope to get value from like a better 5, fold out like some air, and get value from draws. And I bet a little smaller on that flop with the queen 10 just because I thought that I wouldn't have minded a check raise, and he tends to check raise when I bet smaller. So I decided to keep trying this full pot thing, which seems to be working. So I decided to keep doing it, and so far he hasn't check raised it. So I'm going to probably just continue down that road. Glad to see I'm not annoyed enough to be opening the 2-4 offsuit. That's fortunate. That's something positive, I guess, looking back on this match. So ace-9, standard call, and I'm going to check call here. I think that, I just think I have the best hand a lot. A lot of equity against his range on this board. So you can see how fast I'm checking. That's bad. Like, that's going to induce a lot of bluffs, which I don't want. Fortunately, it worked out well. He checked down in a worse ace high. But when you turbo check, like, anyone who picks up on that, they're going to try to bluff you. So be sure to, like, when you're thinking about check raising somebody, you're going to often plan the check raise before you check, which means you're not going to turbo check. So unless you're trying to give off a timing toe, which happens occasionally too. But here you're just gonna. I think I'm just opening myself up to be bluffed by someone who recognizes that. Okay, so queen 7. And he had just 3-bet me when I pot raised it, so kind of wanted to, I just made it 3x again just because I want to see if he would do it again. So I go full pot. The other reason to start pot raising it is because we're deep, and I have position, and I kind of want to inflate the pot a little bit more considering the stacks. Alright, so we're definitely playing a suited, I'd probably play Jack 5 there. Actually, I'd probably play any suited Jack. I'd play any two suited cards with these stacks, for sure. That we can fold. Let's find the button. There we go. I think I'm hopped up on caffeine with the way this mouse is moving. That's exactly what's going on here. Definitely a little jittery, a little irritated. I can just tell just the way my mouse is moving around. Alright, so we fought the flush draw, which is obviously good. And he doesn't check raise, so that kind of makes me think he has a hand like ace high. I think he would have check raised like a pocket pair. He would have check raised like a 4. Definitely a 2. He would have double check raised a 2. We know that. So I think that he may even have like just other random overcards. So I think he leads into me. And I thought this was really interesting because, like, unless he floated like out of position with like a king, which I guess is possible, or like ace king, which I think he would have 3-bet a lot. I'm not really sure like what he's doing here, but I don't really believe him. I think the vast majority of his floats are aces, and there aren't a lot of ace kings in his range. So I decide to raise here, and the other benefit is that the king hits my range. I can rep a king very easily. It's definitely in my betting range on the flop. And I can definitely, if he does call me, I can get bailed out by my flush draw and then get a huge bet in on the river, and have some and expect to get called because if he calls here, he's gonna have something, and he's never gonna believe that I would raise my flush draw right here. Largely, I think because he doesn't raise his, he would never make this play. He would always call here. So I fully expect to get paid if I hit my flush, and he snap folds. So I think it was a good. I think it was a good semi bluff raise. All right, so we flop trips. And the kind of thing like when I find myself in this situation, at the end of a long match and the guy doubles up, I try to just relax as much as I can, and just you know tell myself that if I have to be here another couple hours, so be it. But get used to the idea that it might take a little while, and then just try to get back to focusing on the game instead of being annoyed that it's gonna take a lot longer, or that he doubled up or whatever. So just don't even worry about it. Just focus on doing your thing. All right, so we flop second pair, check call, standard, check it again. So now I think kind of interesting actually. He really doesn't double barrel, but at the same time, I think I can fold here. He just hasn't like. Whenever I see this, he tends to have it. I've called him down in this spot a couple times, and he generally has it. I do have a gut shot and two pair outs and trip outs. So I've got like 9 outs, which is not insignificant at all. And on top of that, we also know he's not very good at value betting thin on the river. So I might get a cheap showdown, which means I might not have to put any more money in to show the hand down. So calling has a few different things going for it. I think without 10 outs, this is probably a fold against Barney. And he bets big, so I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm not even considering calling this. I'm pretty much just making sure that I don't snap fold. You didn't even think that I at least considered calling. And that's the other huge problem with snap doing anything, or snap folding especially, or snap calling. Like when you know the guy's bluffing and he like pots it or overbets, and you snap call with like second pair. I mean, it's just such a huge leak because you have to give the guy the impression that you at least considered folding. Because then if you like tank it and call, he's gonna think, oh well, my bluff works some of the time. It was a good bluff. But if you insta call, he's gonna know his bluff was bad, and he's gonna adjust against you a lot faster because you just told him that you'd never even considered folding. So it can be pretty bad. So we're definitely calling here. Don't get the greatest flop ever. And I decided to float him once. I just have so much good success taking pots from him after he 3-bets. And I decided to go back to the call flop bet turn line. Thought this board was pretty dry. All of the Broadways missed. Really, all they can call me with is like some sort of pocket pair. I just don't think he has that many like. I mean, he could call like pocket 8s or 9s along with a 10 and a 7, but I definitely don't think. I think I can fold him off of like some aces, largely because he's going to either be afraid of a river bet, and if he does call, I think his range is going to be weak enough that like I can probably get him off on the river. So my plan is definitely to bet on the river, I think, if he calls. And he also timed down a little bit. before he called, and I don't think he would have done that with a 10. So I think I can like almost always put him on like something pretty marginal, especially if we can get the 10s out of his ranges. But we do river the jack, which is huge. So now I think we got to bet something that he can look us up with, and we know that his range is marginal. So we got to bet some pretty small amount. I think this might be a little high. I kind of like my original 450 size, but I go 550, which isn't bad, but I think 450 might be a little bit better, just because it's a little less scary, and he might be able to talk himself into calling with like pocket eights, or like 7-8 or something. But he folds pretty fast, so what can you do? I think he more likely had ace high. There are a lot of those combos in his range. And you know he does it a lot where he like calls once and then folds. So all right, so we open up Queen Jack. We're gonna call it 3-bet, of course. Not the flop we're looking for with pocket eights, so I'm just gonna check fold here. Yeah, and when like that board just hits like an opening range like so hard, and then when he like insta bets, you know, just not a spot to be doing anything but folding. All right, so we check back, largely because you know he occasionally will mess around on an ace high flop, and then you know I do have pretty good equity against his range anyway, so I just check back my king high. Then I turn my king and I decide to bet. And I decide to bet again on the river just because I think he would have maybe let out with an ace on the turn, but I also think he's never. I think he also won't ever believe that I have an ace, so he's gonna call me with like a 7 or a 5, and I also think that he'll do it again on the river because this will just look really bluffy, and he won't think that I'll value bet a king here. But he just folds, so. I mean, I feel like I have the best hand there, like so much, so I'm really not too worried about his bluff, his air range. All right, so I go for the check raise on this one. We flop the boat. Actually, I just called him. That's kind of interesting. I wonder what my plan here was. I guess my plan was to go for the check raise on the turn. I think the stacks are deep enough. I just have to go for the check raise here. I check raised the last flop that was that had a paired board on the king 7-7 when I had that jack 5. So I think I just need to do it again here. I mean, he might be suspicious. Yeah, he might not have a hand. Yeah, it's tough for him to have a hand to continue with, but I think like a small check raise is just mandatory just to build this pot up. So now I'm kind of in a weird spot where he checks back on the turn and the pot is small. Not my favorite hand of the match by any means. So I just go ahead and pot the river, just hoping that something can be done here. I can salvage some value. And he raises me. So this is pretty interesting. I think that like he could have a 10 now at this point. And I think him checking back the turn with a 10 is probably even worse than me not check raising the flop with my 3s. But I could definitely see him taking this line. It would definitely kind of make sense of everything we've seen. So the only thing we're worried about is like king 10 and ace 10. But honestly, it's hard to imagine he wouldn't bet the turn with ace 10. It's also hard to imagine he wouldn't bet the turn with king 10, considering he has trips top kicker. So that makes me just think that he either has like a straight somehow that he is raising. He's bluff raising me, which I think is like almost never going to happen. And he could have some other 10. So looking at this now, I honestly can't remember what I did here, but I think I need to go ahead and make a 3-bet for value because I think he has some other random 10 so often that I just can't imagine he would check back the turn with like king 10 or ace 10. Whereas he might check back the turn with like 10-6 or 10-7 and then go ahead and raise here. So okay, this is if I make this 3-bet, I'm gonna consider it of making up for the mistake on the flop. So hopefully that is what happens here. I'm pretty sure I did actually. Oh, I just called. See, that's bad. Okay, fortunately he had absolute error. I still think I should have 3-bet him, just because I think that I just don't think he ever has a better hand ever. So for the reasons I already explained. So I like a 3-bet because then I can free roll on the fact that he has misplayed his trips essentially and get some value. But he did turn up with 5-7, which I was pretty surprised to see. We had not seen something like this from Barney yet, and he, definitely kind of surprised me with that random bluff raise. I don't really like his bluff raise at all. And the fact is, he's not really repping anything. Like, he doesn't bet the turn. Who doesn't bet the turn with a hand that can raise this river? Other than Queen Jack. I mean, that's it. He's repping Queen Jack. And even then, not every time, because Queen Jack's not always going to raise this river. So yeah, I'm not the time for a bluff raise in my opinion, but it worked out pretty well for me. So, all right, so we are kind of back to where we were at the beginning of this video. 40 minutes later, and that was a really good pot. Not played ideally well by me, but as it turns out, screwing up my flop play definitely netted us a little more money on the river. Okay, so we pick up aces. I got aces so many times in this match. It was nice. So a pretty phenomenal board for aces. And we're definitely betting because he doesn't bet when we check to him. And he raises this time, so I'm sure he has something like a king. I mean, he's got something. He's got like a king. I guess he got like a big draw here, something like that. The bottom line is, after that last hand, there's really no way I'm folding. I mean, look how dry this board is. I mean, I have aces and it's heads up. There's just absolutely no reason I'm folding. So I decided to just put it in, which I assume is gonna. There we go. So I repotted all the way up to $1,200. And I get the thing that he's been disconnected, which I definitely didn't want to see because I want to get my money in here. Okay, and he's got a big draw. So he's got, I mean, we're essentially flipping here. He's got the gut shot and the flush draw. I am blocking his ace though. So I have the redraw. And I do hold up, which is nice. So, and that was the last hand of the match. So, kind of a nice dramatic ending to a really long heads-up match. But I hope you guys enjoyed this series. My hat is off to anybody who watched every video. It was something that I just haven't seen done before. Showing every hand in a 750 hand heads up match. So I kind of just wanted to show the highs and lows of playing a long match, both from maybe the monetary aspect, but also more importantly the aspect of being able to concentrate and play your A game the entire match. It's, for me, that's one of the biggest challenges of playing such a long match. Is it's just very difficult to play well throughout the whole thing. So that's just kind of what I wanted to capture and talk a little bit, and it gave me the opportunity to talk a little bit about how to how to deal with some of those challenges. And I think we found some really cool spots along the way, and also we got to talk about some some things that make pot limit Holdem heads up so great, and why I often prefer it to no limit Holdem heads up. But they're both amazing games. So anyway, I hope you guys liked it, and hit me up with any suggestions or comments about this video, the series, or my videos in general. And thanks for being Drag the Bar members, and I will talk to you guys soon.